Have you ever noticed how fragile life can feel? One moment everything seems stable, your job, your relationships, your health, and then, in the blink of an eye, everything shifts. The unexpected arrives, and with it, fear, uncertainty, and sometimes even despair. Most people live as if the good times will last forever. But ancient wisdom teaches us something different. True peace does not come from hoping life will always be kind. It comes from preparing your mind and soul for the storms that inevitably arrive. The Stoics and other ancient philosophers knew this truth deeply. They lived in a world far harsher than ours, where war, exile, poverty, and death were daily companions. Yet out of this reality, they forged a philosophy of strength, resilience, and even joy. They discovered that by preparing for the worst, you are not becoming pessimistic, you are actually liberating yourself. Because once you have made peace with the storms, no storm can take away your calm. Think about this. What if you could walk through life unshaken, no matter what surprises awaited you? What if losing a job, being betrayed, or facing illness didn't destroy you, but instead revealed your strength? Imagine how much freer, lighter, and happier you would feel if nothing outside of you had the power to break your inner balance. This is not just theory. The ancients left us a set of powerful methods, practices that anyone can use to prepare for the worst and, by doing so, live a richer, calmer, and more joyful life. Over the course of this journey, I will guide you through 12 of these timeless methods. Each one will challenge the way you think, but each one will also give you tools that you can apply right now. The first method begins with an uncomfortable but life-changing practice, learning to face your fears before they arrive. Instead of running from them, the ancients invite us to bring them closer, to examine them, and in doing so, remove their sting. The first method, facing your fears before they arrive. The ancients understood something most of us try to forget. Fear grows strongest in the shadows. When you avoid thinking about what could go wrong, your mind doesn't become calmer, it becomes more anxious. Because in the back of your thoughts, there is always the whisper, what if? What if I lose my job? What if my partner leaves me? What if illness comes tomorrow? These questions torment us, precisely because we refuse to face them directly. The Stoics had a practice for this. They called it premeditatio malorum, which means the premeditation of evils. At first, it sounds depressing. Why would anyone spend time imagining all the bad things that could happen? But when you look closer, you realize this practice is not about negativity, it is about strength. By imagining the worst, you rob it of its power. Picture this: you wake up one morning and everything feels uncertain. Maybe you sense changes at work. Maybe the person you love has grown distant. Maybe you feel a pain in your chest that wasn't there yesterday. Instead of pushing these fears away, the Stoic way is to sit with them. To imagine the possibility that yes, I might lose this job. Yes, this relationship may end. Yes, sickness may come. And then to ask, if that happens, will I survive? Will I still be myself? Will I still have my courage, my mind, my ability to choose how to respond? Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Do not look forward to what may happen tomorrow. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same reason you meet today." What he meant was this: once you've rehearsed the storm in your mind, you discover you already have the strength to endure it. Let me ask you this: how many times have you feared something that never actually happened? How much energy did you waste worrying about rejection, failure, or loss, only to realize later that it wasn't as devastating as you imagined, or it never even came to pass? When you practice facing your fears deliberately, you turn them into exercises of the mind. Suddenly, they lose their sharp edge. The benefit of this method is not only preparation. It is also gratitude. When you imagine losing the things you love, you begin to treasure them more deeply. Seneca said, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." But he also added that remembering loss makes you love the present more. When you think, what if I lost my health tomorrow, every breath you take today becomes sweeter. Here's a simple exercise you can try tonight. before you sleep, choose one fear you've been carrying. Maybe it is financial insecurity. Maybe it is the thought of losing someone close. Write it down. Then, calmly imagine it happening. Not in a dramatic, catastrophic way, but plainly. Imagine the loss. Imagine the pain. And then imagine yourself rising again, continuing to live, continuing to breathe, continuing to find meaning. When you finish, notice how the fear has shifted. It is no longer an untouchable monster. It is something you have seen, something you have faced, something you can endure. And this leads to a deeper truth: you are stronger than you think. Every time you face your fears before they arrive, you discover that they are not infinite. They are not unbeatable. They are only stories your mind tells. When you rewrite those stories through this practice, you step closer to fearlessness. So I ask you, what fear are you still hiding from? What shadow are you allowing to drain your peace? Perhaps tonight is the night to face it, calmly, bravely, as the Stoics once did. The second method, practicing voluntary discomfort. Most people spend their lives running away from discomfort. They see hardship as something to be avoided at all costs, a signal that life is failing them. But the ancients, especially the Stoics, believed the opposite. They taught that if you never choose discomfort, discomfort will choose you. And when it does, you won't be ready. Seneca, one of Rome's most respected philosophers, had immense wealth and power. Yet, he often practiced living as if he had nothing. He would sleep on the floor. He would eat coarse bread instead of fine meals. He would wear rough clothing. To an outsider, this must have seemed insane. Why would one of the richest men in Rome deliberately live like a beggar? But Seneca knew a truth we forget: when you taste discomfort by choice, real hardship loses its sting. Think about your own life. How much of your anxiety comes from imagining, what if I lose my comfort? What if I don't have enough money? What if I can't keep the lifestyle I'm used to? The Stoic practice of voluntary discomfort answers this fear by showing you, you can survive on less. You are tougher than you think. Your peace does not depend on luxury. Let me ask you, when was the last time you challenged yourself to step out of your comfort zone, not because you had to, but because you chose to? When did you last sleep without the perfect mattress, skip a meal to test your will, or walk instead of drive to remember the strength of your own body? Here's the secret: every time you practice discomfort voluntarily, you prove to yourself that you are not fragile. You show your mind that even if the worst happens, you will endure. Epictetus, who was born a slave, once told his students, "Difficulties show what men are." He meant that only in hardship do we reveal our real character. But if you wait for hardship to arrive on its own, you might panic, complain, or collapse. If you train yourself in discomfort beforehand, when life strikes, you will already be prepared. Let's make it practical. Imagine you spend one weekend each month living more simply. Maybe you turn off all devices and live without the internet. Maybe you eat only plain foods, rice and beans, bread and water. Maybe you set aside your soft bed and sleep on the floor for a night. At first, you will resist. You will crave your comfort. But then, something surprising happens. You discover gratitude. You realize how little you truly need to feel alive. You feel stronger, freer, less dependent on things outside yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Because a thing seems difficult for you, do not think it impossible for anyone to accomplish." Practicing voluntary discomfort teaches you this lesson. What once seemed unbearable becomes manageable. What once scared you loses its grip. Now consider this: isn't it true that the moments you grew the most in your life came not during times of ease, but during struggle? Maybe it was when you had to work long hours to survive. Maybe it was when you faced rejection and had to keep going. Maybe it was when you lived with very little but discovered what truly mattered. That's the paradox. Discomfort makes you stronger, while comfort makes you softer. So tonight, ask yourself, what could I let go of for just one day to test my strength? Could I spend 24 hours without complaining, even when things feel rough? Could I take a cold shower and remind myself that my body can endure? Could I walk instead of drive and feel the resilience of my own legs? These are not punishments. They are training. They are rehearsals for life. When misfortune eventually arrives, and it always does, you will not break. Because you will remember, I have lived with less before. I can do it again. And my happiness never depended on these externals anyway. This is the wisdom of voluntary discomfort. By seeking out small struggles now, you build the muscles of resilience for tomorrow. So the question is, will you choose to train, or will you wait until life trains you the hard way? The third method, premeditation of misfortune. One of the most radical and misunderstood practices of ancient philosophy is what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. To most people, this sounds pessimistic. Why dwell on the worst that can happen? Doesn't that just make you anxious? But the Stoics flipped this logic. They saw that imagining the worst is not about fear, but about freedom. Think of it this way, fear often comes from uncertainty. We whisper to ourselves, what if? What if I lose my job? What if I fail in front of everyone? What if the people I love leave me? These shadows of possibility haunt the mind precisely because they are unexamined. The Stoics' answer was simple, examine them. Don't let your fears live in the dark corners of your imagination. Drag them into the light. Look at them clearly. And then ask, if this happened, what would I do? Could I endure it? Seneca advised his students to regularly visualize potential misfortunes. Not to obsess, but to prepare. He wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." In other words, what you expect cannot surprise you. Picture this exercise. Before you go to sleep, you sit quietly and ask yourself, what difficulties might tomorrow bring? Maybe a disagreement at work. Maybe unexpected expenses. Maybe a friend disappointing you. You then imagine each one happening. Not as a nightmare, but as a scenario. And in your mind, you practice your response, staying calm, staying rational, staying virtuous. When tomorrow comes, and one of those things really does happen, you're not blindsided. Instead of panic, you feel recognition. You say to yourself, I rehearsed this. I know how to face it. That shift makes all the difference between living in fear and living in control. Now think about modern life. We live in a culture obsessed with positivity. We're told to visualize success, to manifest abundance, to think only good thoughts. And yes, there is value in optimism. But if you only dream of the best, you set yourself up for shock when reality delivers the worst. Isn't that true? Haven't you ever been crushed, not because something bad happened, but because you never considered it could? The Stoic practice of premeditation builds a different kind of confidence. Not the fragile optimism of everything will be perfect, but the grounded resilience of whatever happens, I will be ready. Marcus Aurelius began many mornings by reminding himself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. To a modern ear, this may sound negative. But for Marcus, it was preparation. By expecting human flaws, he was less likely to be disappointed or angry when he encountered them. Isn't that wiser than expecting everyone to always be kind, and then breaking when they're not? Let's make it personal. What is one fear that quietly steals your peace right now? Maybe it's financial insecurity. Maybe it's losing someone you love. Maybe it's failure. Tonight, instead of pushing it away, try the Stoic exercise. Sit with that fear. Play it out in your mind. Ask, if the worst came true, how would I endure? What strengths would I call upon? Who could I become in the face of it? Here's the paradox, the very act of imagining the worst weakens its hold on you. What you rehearse mentally becomes less frightening. Like a soldier who drills before battle, you walk into life prepared, not naive. And let me ask you this, isn't it better to face a fear in the safety of your imagination than to be ambushed by it in reality? Isn't it better to have a plan, even a mental one, than to collapse in surprise when life strikes? This is the gift of premeditation. It transforms fear into readiness. It replaces anxiety with calm. It turns the unknown into something already faced. So tonight, don't just hope tomorrow will be easy. Expect it to be hard, and then be grateful if it isn't. That way, you live with gratitude when things go well, and with resilience when they don't. Either way, you win. The fourth method, voluntary discomfort. If you want to be unshakable when life gets hard, you must sometimes choose hardship when life is easy. This is one of the most powerful, and most overlooked, teachings of the Stoics. They called it voluntary discomfort. At first, it seems strange. Why would anyone willingly step into discomfort? Don't we spend most of our lives trying to avoid it? But here's the paradox: the more you avoid discomfort, the weaker you become. The more you expose yourself to it, the stronger and freer you feel. Seneca practiced this deliberately. Even though he was a wealthy man, he would sometimes sleep on the floor, eat coarse bread, wear rough clothing, and remind himself, "Is this what I feared?" By lowering himself into temporary hardship, he trained his mind to detach from luxury. If life ever took those comforts away, he would not be broken, because he had already learned he could live without them. Now let's pause here and reflect. What happens to most of us when we get too comfortable? We grow fragile. We panic when the air conditioning breaks. We despair if our Wi-Fi goes down. We get irritated by a short delay at the airport, as if patience is too heavy a burden. Isn't that absurd? If such small inconveniences unsettle us, how will we endure when real storms hit, job loss, betrayal, illness, grief? The Stoics knew the answer: you train in peace to be strong in war. Voluntary discomfort is like lifting weights for the soul. You don't wait until disaster strikes to see if you can handle it, you prepare now, in controlled doses. So what does this look like today? It can be simple. Take a cold shower. Skip a meal. Sleep on the floor once a month. Walk instead of driving. Leave your phone behind for a day. Each act whispers to your mind, "I can endure this. Comfort does not own me." And think about how liberating that is. If you know you can go without luxury, you no longer live in fear of losing it. If you know hunger won't break you, you fear less about money. If you know loneliness won't destroy you, you cling less desperately to unhealthy relationships. Every little practice of discomfort is a brick in the fortress of your resilience. Let me ask you, when was the last time you tested yourself willingly? Not because life forced you, but because you chose it. How different would your confidence feel if you proved to yourself, over and over, that you can handle more than you thought? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that the body is strong, that the mind is stronger, and that nature made us to endure. He wrote, "If it is endurable, then endure it." Stop complaining. Voluntary discomfort is not about suffering for its own sake, it is about discovering your true strength and cutting the chains of fear. Imagine this: two people face the same challenge, a week without their usual comforts. One is panicked, restless, and bitter because their happiness was tied to those comforts. The other shrugs, breathes, and says, "I've lived like this before. It's nothing new." Which one do you want to be? Voluntary discomfort is freedom. Because once you know you can live with less, you are no longer controlled by the fear of loss. You live lighter. You live braver. You live unafraid. So tonight, ask yourself, what small discomfort can I choose tomorrow, not to punish myself, but to prepare myself? What little storm can I walk through now, so that when a real storm comes, I will stand unbroken? The fifth method, negative visualization. One of the deepest Stoic practices is what they call premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. At first, this sounds gloomy, Why would anyone deliberately imagine bad things happening? But here lies one of the greatest secrets of resilience and happiness. Most people live in denial of life's fragility. They cling to the illusion that tomorrow is guaranteed, that their possessions will always be there, that loved ones will never leave, that their health will remain stable. And when reality breaks that illusion, when sickness comes, when death knocks, when fortune turns, they are shattered. The Stoics refused to live in that illusion. Instead, they practiced the kind of mental rehearsal. They would calmly imagine losing what they had: wealth, health, relationships, even life itself. Epictetus said, "When you kiss your child, say to yourself, tomorrow, he may die." Not as a curse, but as a reminder to treasure every embrace, to never take love for granted. Think about how different this makes life feel. If you wake each morning and picture, just for a moment, that it could be your last sunrise, how much more vivid the colors seem. If you imagine that the person you speak to might not be here tomorrow, how much kinder your words become. If you reflect that your comforts could vanish overnight, how much more grateful you are for them today. Negative visualization is not pessimism. It is gratitude sharpened by the awareness of loss. The pessimist expects the worst and despairs. The Stoic imagines the worst and prepares, so that when life is generous, he rejoices twice. Now let's be honest, modern culture avoids this kind of thinking. We chase distractions, hide from mortality, pretend that bad things happen only to others. But tell me, does that make us stronger or weaker? Does pretending that suffering doesn't exist shield us when it comes? Or does it leave us soft and unready? The Stoics knew the truth. Facing reality makes you unbreakable. When you rehearse loss in your mind, two things happen. First, you appreciate what you have far more deeply. Second, you reduce the shock if life does take it away. Instead of screaming, "Why me?" you can whisper, "I knew this day would come. And I am ready." So how can you practice this today? Each morning, before you rush into the chaos of life, pause and reflect. Picture yourself without one of the things you value most. Imagine waking up without your job, your car, your phone, your home. Imagine a day without the person you love. Not to cause sorrow, but to ignite gratitude. Then, when you open your eyes and see that it is still there, you smile with deeper joy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Begin each day by telling yourself, 'Today I shall meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness.'" He rehearsed human flaws daily, so that he would not be surprised or embittered when they appeared. In the same way, negative visualization steels you against disappointment and teaches you to meet life with calm courage. And let me ask you, how would your life change if you stopped clinging as if things were permanent, and instead loved them fully knowing they are temporary? Wouldn't that make every day more intense, every connection more sacred, every breath more alive? Negative visualization is not about darkening your mood, it is about brightening your vision. When you accept that everything is fragile, you finally see how precious it truly is. So tonight, as you lay down to sleep, reflect gently. What if this day was my last? Did I love enough? Did I waste my time, or did I live it fully? And if you didn't, promise yourself that tomorrow you will. The sixth method, the discipline of voluntary hardship. If you want to be prepared for the worst, you cannot only think about it, you must train for it. The Stoics believed that true strength comes not from comfort, but from practicing discomfort while life is still good. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, would sometimes sleep on the floor, wear rough clothes, and eat the plainest food, whispering to himself, "Is this what I feared?" Why would a man of riches and influence do this? Because he knew that fortune is a cruel master. One day you feast, the next day famine arrives. One day you walk in silk, the next you are stripped of everything. And when that day comes, the one who has practiced poverty in times of wealth is not destroyed, he is already prepared. Ask yourself, when was the last time you stepped outside your comfort zone on purpose? Not because life forced you to, but because you chose to. Most of us design our lives to avoid difficulty. We want warmth, softness, convenience, endless entertainment. But does comfort make us stronger or weaker? The Stoics believe that comfort dulls the soul. A person who has never fasted panics when food is scarce. A person who has never walked in the cold trembles when winter strikes. A person who has never lived without luxury cries when fortune withdraws her gifts. But the one who has practiced voluntary hardship can smile and say, I have been here before. I can endure. This is not about torturing yourself. It is about training resilience. A soldier does not wait for war to begin before learning how to carry a weapon. In the same way, a Stoic does not wait for hardship to come, he practices it in advance. Here are some ways you can try this today. Fast occasionally. Skip a meal or two, not as punishment but as practice. Feel the hunger and realize it cannot defeat you. Choose simplicity. Wear plain clothes, take a cold shower, walk instead of driving. Teach yourself that luxury is optional, not necessary. Practice stillness. Turn off the noise, the screens, the constant stimulation. Sit in silence and learn to be at peace with your own mind. These small exercises are like lifting weights for the soul. They prepare you for the day when real loss arrives, when comfort disappears. And when that day comes, and it will, you will not be broken. Seneca wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which ye shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared?" Notice how this is not about misery. It is about freedom. Because once you know you can endure the simple life, nothing can enslave you. Think about it. If wealth can vanish and you are still content, what power does fortune have over you? If luxury disappears and you remain calm, who can frighten you? If you can sit with nothing and still smile, then you have discovered the greatest wealth, inner independence. Now pause for a moment. Imagine losing half of what you own today. Imagine your comfort stripped away, your luxuries gone. Would you collapse, or would you rise? Voluntary hardship is the rehearsal that makes rising possible. And here is the paradox: by embracing hardship when you don't have to, you actually become happier. Why? Because gratitude blossoms in contrast. After sleeping on the floor, your bed feels like heaven. After fasting, even bread tastes divine. After walking in the rain, a warm room feels like a palace. So ask yourself, what is one comfort you cling to every single day? Could you set it aside, just for a while, to train your mind and body to be stronger? Could you live more simply, not forever, but enough to remind yourself that you are tougher than you think? The Stoics understood that fortune is unstable, but character is within your control. By practicing voluntary hardship, you build character so strong that no storm can sweep it away. The seventh method: rehearsing misfortune in the mind. If you wish to live happier, you must stop pretending that life will always be kind. The Stoics were not naive. They knew storms were always forming on the horizon, even when the skies above looked clear. And that is why they practiced what they called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. What does this mean? It means to picture, calmly and clearly, the worst that could happen, before it happens. Not in panic, not in despair, but as a rehearsal of the soul. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall meet interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil." Notice his wisdom. By rehearsing misfortune in the morning, he was not cursing his day. He was preparing his mind. He trained himself not to be surprised by hardship, because surprise is often worse than pain itself. Think of your own life. How many times has disappointment hurt more because you never expected it? A friendship breaks, a job is lost, health declines, and you collapse, not only from the loss, but from the shock of it. The Stoic says, "I will not be shocked. I will expect the worst, and therefore I will remain calm when it comes." Some might think this is pessimism, but it is not. The Stoics were some of the most joyful people in history, precisely because they did not deny the reality of suffering. They understood that the universe owes us nothing. Fortune gives and takes as she pleases. And so, instead of living in illusion, they trained their hearts in truth. Seneca explained it beautifully. The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. How can you practice this today? Here are some ways. Morning preparation. Before your day begins, imagine the obstacles you might face. Will someone insult you? Will plans fall apart? Will traffic test your patience? Picture these things happening and prepare your response, calm, steady, unshaken. Financial rehearsal. Imagine losing half your income. What would you do? Where would you cut back? How would you adapt? By walking through it mentally, you reduce the terror if it ever arrives. Mortality meditation. The Stoics did not shy away from death. They often reminded themselves that every loved one could be gone tomorrow, and so could they. Instead of making them cold, this made them love more fiercely, live more urgently, and waste less time. Now, pause and ask yourself, what are you most afraid of losing? Your job. Your health. Someone you love. Imagine, right now, that it has already been taken away. Feel the grief. Feel the emptiness. And then, breathe. See that you are still here, still breathing, still capable of enduring. This practice is not meant to rob you of joy, but to deepen it. When you have already rehearsed loss, you hold your blessings with lighter hands. You love your family more, because you know they are not guaranteed. You enjoy your health more, because you know it can fade. You savor your wealth more, because you know it can vanish. And here lies the paradox: rehearsing misfortune makes you happier, not sadder. Because instead of clinging in desperation, you live in gratitude. Every good thing becomes a gift, not an entitlement. Think of Marcus Aurelius again, Emperor of Rome, surrounded by power, wealth, and glory. Yet he reminded himself every morning, people will betray me, insult me, disappoint me. And because he expected it, he remained calm, steady, and just. This is not pessimism. This is power. So ask yourself, are you willing to face the worst in your imagination so that you can face life's storms with courage? Or will you continue to live as if nothing bad will ever come, only to be shattered when it does? Rehearsing misfortune is not about living in fear, it is about disarming fear. It is about saying to yourself, even if everything I hold dear is stripped away, I will not be destroyed. I will endure. I will still live with dignity. This is the seventh step, not denial, not blindness, but preparation. Because when you have already lived the pain in your mind, you can live with strength in reality. The eighth method, practicing detachment from possessions. One of the most dangerous illusions of life is the belief that what we own belongs to us forever. We cling to our wealth, our status, our house, our car, even our reputation, as if they were permanent parts of who we are. But the Stoics warned, everything external is borrowed, and fortune can reclaim it at any time. Epictetus put it simply, never say of anything, I have lost it, but I have returned it. Has your child died? It has been returned. Has your wife died? She has been returned. Has your estate been taken? That too has been returned. This is not cold-heartedness. It is clarity. Imagine living in a house you rent. You take care of it, you enjoy it, you decorate it, but you never forget that one day, the lease will end. That is how the Stoics lived with every possession. Clothes, money, even loved ones, all were temporary gifts, entrusted to their care. Now pause and ask yourself, what possession in your life do you fear losing the most? Is it your phone, the device that holds your memories and your work? Is it your home, the place that gives you safety? Is it your career, the source of your identity? Imagine for a moment that it is gone. Taken, burned, lost. How does your body react? Tightness in the chest. A rush of panic. This is the grip of attachment. The Stoics believe such attachment is slavery. Because when you cling desperately to what can be taken, you hand over your peace to something outside your control. And the moment life decides to reclaim it, you break. But detachment does not mean rejection. The Stoics were not monks hiding in caves. They enjoyed beauty, wealth, comfort, but with light hands. Seneca was a wealthy man, yet he wrote, "A wise man is content with what he has, without despising what he does not have." He used his wealth, but he was not owned by it. Here is a practice for you. Take an ordinary object you use daily, a cup, a pen, even your favorite shirt. Imagine it breaking, being lost, or stolen. Whisper to yourself, "I am ready to part with you." When you practice this daily, possessions lose their chains around your heart. You still use them, still enjoy them, but without fear. Another practice, occasionally deny yourself luxury. Sleep on the floor once a month. Eat only bread and water for a day. Walk instead of driving. Seneca recommended this strongly. Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself, "Is this what I feared?" By doing so, you discover how little you truly need. Ask yourself, are you using your possessions, or are they using you? Do you control your wealth, or does your wealth control you? Would you still be yourself if stripped of everything you own? The answer reveals your freedom. If your identity collapses when your possessions are gone, then you were never free. But if you can lose them and still remain calm, then you have touched the heart of Stoic resilience. Think of Marcus Aurelius again, Emperor of Rome. The most powerful man in the world, surrounded by riches, palaces, armies. Yet he reminded himself in his journal, "Soon you will have forgotten the world, and soon the world will have forgotten you." His palaces, his statues, his treasures, all dust. Only character endures. This is the core of the eighth method, practice detachment. Own what you have, but do not let it own you. Use possessions, but do not depend on them for happiness. Prepare your soul to say goodbye to anything at any moment. Because in truth, nothing is yours to keep, not your money, not your house, not even your body. All is borrowed. And when you accept this, you can finally breathe free. So ask yourself right now, if tomorrow you woke up with nothing, no wealth, no status, no possessions, would you still have yourself? Would you still have your dignity, your courage, your will? If yes, then you are stronger than fortune. If not, then it is time to begin practicing detachment. The ninth method, mastering the art of expecting challenges. One of the most profound teachings of the Stoics was this: never be surprised by adversity. Life is not a gentle stream, it is an ocean with storms. And if you expect calm waters forever, every wave will feel like a disaster. But if you anticipate storms, then when they come, you will meet them prepared, not broken. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil." He did not write this to become bitter. He wrote this to steel his mind, so that when betrayal, insult, or rudeness arrived, he would not be shocked. Now pause and ask yourself, how often have you been shattered because something unexpected happened? A friend you trusted gossiped behind your back. A colleague stole credit for your work. A sudden bill drained your savings. Each time, you said, "Why me? How could this happen?" But think, why not you? Did you ever believe you were immune to life's blows? The Stoics teach that surprise is often worse than the pain itself. When you expect only comfort, then even a small discomfort feels unbearable. But when you expect challenge, you meet it with calm. Like a soldier who trains in the mud so that the battlefield does not shock him. Here is a practice: each morning, write down the difficulties you may face that day. A rude driver cutting you off. A demanding boss. A broken appliance. A disappointment from a friend. Visualize them. Accept them as already on their way. And then whisper, "None of these can touch my inner fortress." By doing this, you remove the sting of surprise. When the event arrives, you nod and say, "Ah, I was waiting for you." Instead of anger, you meet it with understanding. Seneca said, "The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." This is not pessimism, it is armor. Expecting challenges does not make you negative, it makes you unshakable. Now reflect, what challenges consistently break your calm? Is it criticism? Financial stress? Loneliness? Identify them. Prepare for them in your mind. Train yourself to say, "When this comes, I will not be surprised. I will meet it as a Stoic." Another exercise, practice negative visualization. Imagine losing something you love, your job, your health, even someone dear. Sit with the pain for a moment. Then remind yourself, if this happens, I can still endure. Others before me have endured worse. By rehearsing loss, you reduce its terror. Think of athletes. They don't train only when they feel strong. They train in the rain, in the cold, when their muscles ache. Why? Because they know the contest will not wait for perfect conditions. So too with life. If you prepare for hardship in your mind daily, then when it strikes, you will already be strong. So ask yourself, are you preparing for the inevitable storms, or are you still clinging to the fantasy of endless calm? Which is wiser, to dream of a life without challenges, or to train your mind so that no challenge can break you? Marcus Aurelius lived surrounded by betrayal, war, plague. He could not afford illusions. And neither can you. The ninth method teaches you to rehearse adversity, to expect it, to meet it with courage. Because once you stop being surprised, you stop being a victim. And when you finally master this art, something extraordinary happens. You begin to welcome challenge, not fear it. You see it as fuel for your growth. And in that moment, life cannot break you, because you are already ready. The 10th method, practicing voluntary hardship. The Stoics believed that to prepare for the worst and to live with strength, you must sometimes choose discomfort on purpose. At first this sounds strange. Why would anyone deliberately step into hardship? But the answer is powerful, because the one who willingly embraces difficulty is never broken when life forces difficulty upon him. Seneca wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which ye shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared?" In other words, live simply, not because you must, but because you choose to. Think for a moment, how often do you cling to comfort? The warm bed, the delicious meal, the endless scrolling, the easy path. We are so accustomed to comfort that when discomfort arrives, an illness, a financial setback, or rejection, it feels unbearable. But imagine if you had already trained your mind and body to endure less. Wouldn't those same hardships lose much of their sting? Here is the Stoic practice. Each month, take a few days to strip life down to its bare essentials. Eat simple food, bread, rice, beans. Sleep without luxury. Avoid entertainment. Wear plain clothes. Then ask yourself, is this so terrible? Can I endure this? Most people discover that not only can they endure it, but they feel strangely free. Because when you know you can survive on little, fear loses its grip on you. Fear whispers, if you lose your job, you will starve. If you fail, you will be ruined. But after voluntary hardship, you smile and answer, even in simplicity, I can endure. I need less than I thought. That realization is liberation. Consider this, the rich man who cannot miss his luxuries is more enslaved than the poor man who is content with little. Which one is truly free? Which one has built real strength? Now pause and ask yourself, What is the one comfort you believe you cannot live without? Is it your phone? Coffee? The constant approval of others? Try going without it for a short period. Notice the discomfort, but also notice the growth. Notice the strength that comes when you realize you are not a slave to it. Voluntary hardship also sharpens gratitude. After sleeping on the floor, your bed feels like a gift. After eating plain bread, a warm meal feels like a feast. The Stoics knew that by lowering your threshold of expectation, everything above it becomes joy. Seneca again, he is most powerful who has power over himself. Voluntary hardship is the training ground for that power. Because when you strip away comfort, you strip away illusion. You stand face to face with your true self, not the self that hides behind wealth or ease, but the self that can endure. Another practice: go for a walk in the cold without complaining. Take a cold shower and breathe calmly. Fast for a day and notice your mind sharpen. Sleep with no pillow. Each of these is a reminder: I am stronger than my cravings. I am not a prisoner of comfort. But remember, this is not about punishing yourself. It is about training. Just as athletes lift weights to prepare for the real contest, Stoics embrace discomfort to prepare for life. Every small act of voluntary hardship makes you tougher, calmer, freer. So I ask you, do you want to be ruled by comfort, or do you want to master yourself? Do you want to live in fear of losing what you have, or do you want to walk through life unafraid because you know you can endure with little? The 10th method teaches us that freedom is not in gaining more, but in needing less. When you practice hardship by choice, life's hardships lose their power over you. And then, no storm, no loss, no discomfort can truly shake your peace. The 11th method: mastering the art of perspective. The way we see the world shapes the way we suffer in it. Two people can live through the same event: a job loss, a betrayal, a harsh word, and one crumbles while the other grows stronger. Why? Because of perspective. The Stoics understood that events themselves are not good or bad, it is our judgment of them that gives them power. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." These words are a doorway to resilience. Because if your suffering is tied to judgment, then you have the power to lessen it by changing that judgment. Imagine this: you wake up to rain on the day of your planned outdoor event. One person curses the sky, falls into anger, and ruins the day. Another smiles, makes tea, and reads by the window, grateful for the quiet. The rain is the same, but the experience is completely different. The difference lies not in the storm but in the story told about the storm. Now think about your own life. How many times have you called something a disaster, only to realize later that it led to growth, wisdom, or even opportunity? Perhaps the breakup that shattered your heart also freed you from a toxic relationship. Perhaps the job you lost pushed you toward a better path. The Stoics invite us to remember, we don't always see the whole picture in the moment. Marcus Aurelius advised, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. This is not denial. It is discipline. It is reminding yourself that you can choose the frame through which you look at hardship. Here is a practice: whenever something painful happens, pause and ask, what else could this mean? How else can I see this? Instead of saying, this is the worst, say, this is training. This is practice for patience, for strength, for courage. Turn the setback into a classroom. Let's take a modern example. Suppose someone criticizes you publicly. The instinct is to feel humiliated, angry, defensive. But the Stoic shift is to see it as a test. A test of composure. A chance to show dignity under fire. Even a chance to learn if some of the criticism is useful. Suddenly, the sting becomes lighter because you turn pain into practice. Another way to use perspective is through time. Ask yourself, will this matter in 5 days? 5 months? 5 years? Most of the things that consume our energy today are forgotten by next week. Why surrender peace to what is so temporary? Seneca reminded us, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Think of the nights you have lost to worry. You imagined every worst outcome, lived through every possible disaster in your mind, only for none of it to happen. Perspective tells you, these are just shadows, not realities. You can step out of them. And yet, perspective is not about pretending life is easy. It is about remembering that you hold the power to name your experience. You can call it a curse, or you can call it a challenge. You can call it destruction, or you can call it transformation. Which story makes you stronger? Here's a practical exercise. At the end of each day, write down one difficult moment you faced. Then reframe it. If you were angry in traffic, write, "This was training for patience." If someone insulted you, write, "This was training for humility." By reframing, you transform your pain into growth. Now, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what challenge are you facing right now that feels unbearable? What would happen if you chose to see it as preparation instead of punishment? Could that change alone lighten the weight you carry? The Stoics were masters at this. They taught themselves to look at hardship from above, like a bird seeing the whole landscape. From that height, even mountains look smaller. You can learn to do the same. Step back. Breathe. See the bigger picture. The 11th method reminds us that suffering often lies not in events but in interpretation. If you can master the art of perspective, you can walk through storms with calm, because you know storms are not enemies, they are simply weather, passing through. The 12th method, remembering the shortness of life. There is perhaps no greater teacher of resilience than the awareness that time is limited. The Stoics called this practice memento mori, remember that you must die. At first glance, it sounds dark, even depressing. But in truth, it is a call to life. Because when you remember that your days are finite, you stop wasting them on what doesn't matter. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." These words strike like lightning. How many hours have you lost to worrying about opinions, replaying past mistakes, or complaining about what you don't control? How many days have been stolen by anger, envy, or fear? The Stoics remind us, death is not the enemy, wasted life is. When you live with awareness of mortality, suddenly the small irritations shrink. The insult, the delay, the inconvenience, do they really matter when your time here is limited? You realize that every day is too precious to hand over to bitterness. Instead, you focus on what nourishes your soul: love, virtue, growth, presence. Marcus Aurelius kept this thought at the heart of his practice: you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. Imagine carrying that awareness through your day. How differently would you live if you knew this was your last sunrise? Would you waste it in complaint, or would you spend it with gratitude and courage? Here's a practical exercise. In the morning, remind yourself that the day ahead is a gift. In the evening, ask yourself, if this had been my last day, did I live it with purpose? This reflection can reshape the way you approach even the most ordinary routines. But memento mori is not about fear, it is about freedom. Because when you accept that death is inevitable, you stop fearing it. And when you stop fearing it, nothing else can truly enslave you. You become free to act boldly, to love fully, to live honestly. Now, let's bring everything together. Over these 12 ancient methods, we've learned how to prepare for the worst and live happier, from training the mind to embrace discomfort, to practicing gratitude, to reframing hardships, to remembering our mortality. Each step is not just philosophy, it is practical armor for the soul. Ask yourself, which of these methods speaks to you the most right now? Which one do you need to practice today? The Stoics would tell you, don't just nod and agree, put it into action. Knowledge without practice is like medicine left unopened on the shelf. And here is the ultimate Stoic secret: happiness does not come from avoiding difficulty, but from facing life with wisdom and courage. When you prepare for the worst, you are no longer fragile. You become unshakable, because you have rehearsed, accepted, and grown beyond fear. And when fear loses its grip, joy finds its way back in. So the 12th method is really this: live today as if it matters, because it does. Don't wait for tomorrow to start practicing strength, compassion, and presence. Don't wait for the right time to let go of grudges, to forgive, to create, to love. The right time is now. And before you go, I invite you to reflect. If you left this world tomorrow, what would you regret not doing? Let that question guide your choices today. Final call. If these lessons moved you, if they gave you even a spark of courage or calm, then stay with us. Subscribe to this channel, because we are building a space where ancient wisdom becomes modern strength. Leave a comment below. Tell us which Stoic method you want to try in your own life. Share your voice, because your reflection might inspire someone else who needs it. And most of all, don't just listen. Live it. The Stoics remind us, philosophy is not for the classroom, but for the battlefield of life. Take these 12 methods, carry them into your days, and let them help you walk through storms with peace, through chaos with clarity, and through life with joy. Because in the end, the happiest life is not the easiest one. It is the one lived with courage, wisdom, and love.